What's up everyone, I'm Dan and thanks to Lambsmith and Lilimo Games for the review code. I'll be looking at Saintslayer Spear of Sacrilege on the Nintendo Switch systems. Saintslayer is the kind of game that makes its influences obvious within seconds. Its Castlevania inspiration is evident from the very start. Yet what makes Saintslayer stand out is that it does not stop at imitation. It understands why those old games worked in the first place and then builds something that feels authentic, demanding and rewarding in its own right. Set in 1698, the game casts you as Rudiger, an ex-soldier turned farmer who is forced back into battle after the sinister Father Pacer begins tearing through the Holy Roman Empire, stealing Catholic relics and unleashing monsters in his wake. From the opening story presentation, Saintslayer immediately sets the tone and never really lets go. Visually, this is a gorgeous homage to NES era action games. The pixel art is excellent with dark gothic environments that feel atmospheric without becoming muddy or unreadable. Castles, villages, interiors and ruined spaces all have enough detail to feel handcrafted, and the overall presentation does a great job of selling the world. It is retro, yes, but it is also strikingly confident in its art direction. It looks like a game from the older era, but one that's been polished with real care. The soundtrack also deserves just as much praise. Saintslayer's 8-bit chiptune score is fantastic, full of energy and atmosphere. I completely loved it. It has that unmistakable classic action platformer feel, boss themes are great, and the whole audio reinforces the feeling that you're playing something made by people who deeply understand the era that they're referencing. Gameplay is where Saintslayer is at its best, but at the same time, it may come down to either you really gel with this one or you hate it. This is a tough game. It is deliberately tough in fact, and it never apologizes for that. Movement is committed in the classic side-scrolling style, meaning every jump, attack and dodge matters. You cannot float through the air or casually correct your mistakes. In that sense, the controls do feel a bit stiff and unresponsive at times. They can be harsh at first, especially for players used to modern platformers that are more forgiving. Combat is simple to understand but demanding to master. Enemies can sometimes attack in slightly random patterns, which means you cannot always rely on pure memorization at first. Still, that unpredictability becomes manageable once you learn how each enemy behaves. Saintslayer rewards observation. After a few deaths, and you'll die a lot, you begin to recognize attack rhythms, opening windows and save spacing. That learning process is the heart of the game. It can be frustrating early on, but once the patterns click, the combat becomes much more satisfying. As you progress through the game, you'll learn new abilities such as using your spear to make platforms, doing a down attack and sliding. It keeps the gameplay fresh and gives you new ways of overcoming obstacles. The game also does a good job of making exploration worthwhile. Even though it is a retro side-scroller, the levels are not just straight paths from left to right. They are hidden treasures, breakable walls, buildings to search, and the optional rewards for players willing to slow down and look around. Animal familiars add even more personality with helpful companions like a raven that will collect items and deal with hazards. There is a real sense that the game is full of secrets, and that encourages replaying stages rather than simply rushing through them. That replay value matters because Saintslayer has a lot to offer. Between its 21 stage campaign, 7 boss fights, multiple endings, challenge modifiers, passwords, collectibles, and hidden content, this is not a thin retro throwback. It is a substantial single player action game with plenty of reason to return. The choice system where you can help or hurt those on your journey also adds a little extra to the experience. The difficulty will absolutely be the biggest dividing line. Some players will love how uncompromising it is, others will give up after the first few levels. Fortunately, the game does include easier options that reduce some of the harsher elements, including knockback and enemy density. That is a smart inclusion because it lets more players learn the systems without feeling completely overwhelmed. Once the mechanics click, the game becomes much more approachable, but it never stops asking you to stay alert. Saintslayer Spear of Sacrilege is not trying to be a friendly nostalgia trip. It is trying to be a true retro action platformer in the best sense, demanding, atmospheric, memorable, and full of personality. It takes its Castlevania influence seriously, but it also has enough of its own ideas to avoid feeling like a shallow clone. For players who miss the era of precise jumps, hard fights and rewarding mastery, this is a very strong throwback. For everyone else, it may be a challenge, but it is a challenge worth taking. Saint Slayer Spear of Sacrilege is out now on the Nintendo eShop, priced at $9.89 in the UK and $9.99 in the US. Big thanks to you all for watching, hope you enjoyed the review, and until next time.